here at CPS Homes head office on Woodville Road, Cathays, where comedian Joe Lycett, formerly known as Hugo Boss, came with actor Jamie Lang in tow to rave about the student lettings reviews on the 30th of January 2020. CPS Homes let over 2,000 properties every year, managing more than 1,200 of them, and find properties for over 7,000 individuals each year. While the peak of tenants' negative experiences seemed to hit in the summer of 2019, that's according to CPS's own official statement released the day after Joe Lycett's Got Your Back episode, Cardiff student media has been reporting on the agency's poor living conditions for tenants as early as 2012, where Guy Rea's reporter Michael O'Connell-Davidson highlighted Cardiff University student Claire Fisher's story, whose Facebook post describing how after 3 months of waiting for her replacement floor, the mould had grown ever thicker and the mice had tripled in numbers, and that during viewings CPS had turned over the mousetraps, and that maintenance for the showerhead was exceedingly slow, reached over 700 likes. And to this day, bad reviews keep appearing, and worryingly, with the exact same issues, suggesting that despite Channel 4's best efforts to make students' dissatisfaction publicly known to the letting agency, that the onus is on the landlord, the situation seems to be mostly the same as it did 2 years ago. A quick search shows that the company has 632 Google reviews, averaging 3.8 out of 5 stars. But many of these 5-star reviews are posted by tenants who only very recently signed with the agency, with the much more negative reviews coming from long-time tenants, who shared the positive beginnings before their experience plummets. Jaden Khan posting last month a 1-star review stating that CPS are really good at selling houses to students, not good at solving issues. You got a broken fire alarm, you have to pay for it. You've got pests, you have to pay for it. Likewise, CPS Homes' Trustpilot score ranks highly at 4.2 out of 5, a combination of 774 reviews ranging from 2017 to the present day. But upon further inspection, CPS have used incentives to collect reviews in the past, meaning that any review left prior to the 1st of August 2020 could be potentially biased, with previous tenants commenting that CPS have deleted over 80 negative reviews from previous tenants. Look at their account info. While CPS mostly respond to reviews with a personalised message to that particular client and instance, it's not uncommon to find an automated generic message, implying that many tenants' issues never get resolved. I spoke to Charlie Buckland, a previous tenant of CPS Homes, to hear the common complaints left by both tenants and landlords alike on these platforms, such as a lack of communication between tenant, landlord and agency, large deductions from deposits over damage that existed prior to the tenancy, as well as the damages themselves, such as infections, the maintenance, or in their case lack of, and in some cases a lack of furniture, she knew all too well.
Straight off the bat, I definitely had my reservations about going with CPS. But it was a situation where we was running out of time. I stressed my concerns to my other flatmates, but they were very adamant that things would be okay. And with their no deposit policy, I thought that we'd be relatively okay because a lot of the past stories were regarding issues with getting their deposits back. So anyway, we wasn't allowed any viewings due to COVID. They were slashed. So we just seen a video of the property. So we moved in on the 1st of August, and it was worse than anything I think I could have ever anticipated. So there was a broken flush, missing beds, there were rats in the garden, leftover rubbish from past tenants, visible mould, eroding kitchen worktop. There was a dehumidifier under the stairs as well, which they tried to say that they had no prior knowledge of the damp when there was literally visible damp and a dehumidifier. So we went straight to CPS to complain, but it was just kind of relentlessly never ending in terms of them getting back to us with any sort of remedial actions regarding everything. Yeah, so we did get a response, but it was through my efforts of persistently going on to them, so it was corresponding emails and phone calls with them, because initially when we would send emails, their responses would be so delayed that when you're in that situation you just want to pick up the phone and urgently get some answers. But the issue with that then is obviously you have no prior knowledge or evidence then of your conversations. So we moved in on the 1st of August, and we was really amicable, I think, and quite patient, because I understand that these things take quite a while to get together. There was contractors that would come to the property, but they kept saying that it was the landlord at fault. They were waiting response from the landlord. So after about 7 weeks, we complained to environmental health. So the local council were really great in coming over quite promptly, and they deemed the property unfit to live. So it was from that point then that we went to CPS and we said that we have this visible proof that it's not habitable for us at all. But the issue there was with the delay with the council as well in sending the report off to CPS. So nothing was formally done, even though they had a list of all of the actions that needed to be made. And it just progressively got worse and worse. So the further that they pushed things back, the weather obviously worsened, so the mould just got progressively worse. At this point, I think they began works on the worktops, but the issue of the mould, which was my primary concern for obviously our physical health, was still absolutely left. There was mould in every single room, so you had rising damp all downstairs that was in the hall, in the front bedroom, the front living room, and then there was mould in every single bedroom upstairs. There was 3 upstairs. And at that point, I was shifted from colleague to colleague. So you'd have to reiterate your story again and again. And this on your mental health is so draining, because I took kind of the brunt of it all, and I just had to reiterate my story. It was so time consuming. And I've actually spoke to someone and they said the same. Their handling with CPS took more time away from their studies than they ever could have imagined, because you're just chasing up for something to be done and some sympathy, really. So emotionally, I was really low, to the point where I think a lot of my family were quite concerned about me, and I was concerned about myself as well, to be honest, because beyond the physical issues of living in a house that's riddled with mould, it's just the sheer ignorance of the letting agency. They just didn't acknowledge how I felt, or how we all felt, the urgency of the situation. I think that they completely thought that we was being quite pedantic and petty, when the issues weren't at all, and we would attach images consistently, but no one came round for inspections. We would have contractors visit, but again that would be like pushed back again. So we'd have contractor visit, we wouldn't hear back, we'd have to chase it up. And even now in itself, there just seemed to be no urgency from the agency. So I woke up one morning towards the end of November, and at this point I'd already had to move my bed from there being damp. I was sleeping and there was damp behind my pillows, which I discovered. So I had to move my bed. In the new position, I found damp again. So I just kind of woke up and I just broke down, and I rang my dad, and he said, look, just move out there. It's not worth the distress that you're going through and the distraction it is from your studies. It's really hard. I didn't actually reach out to university help, although I did have to inform my tutors about the situation, just because I felt that I wasn't myself within my studies. And I did feel like this had an effect on how I was performing academically. So they did say that you could apply for extenuating circumstances, which is not something that I chose to go down, but they were really helpful in the sense that there's, you know, options out there for you to make it easier for you. I reached out to Citizens Advice, which advised me in the earlier first few weeks of us moving in, and it was them who said to me to complain to the local council. But Citizens Advice are great, and you can call them for free as well, which is fantastic. But again, I mean, the only issue with all of these things, and I completely sympathise with, and I think what had such a detriment on my mental health was the fact that it takes so much time. You know, you're calling people, you're waiting on hold to then speak to them, you have to relay information. So, as I say, I know it's not really easy to do, but I think it's really important, because I think if we're all just complacent with it and kind of let them get away with it, or don't fight or call them out basically for anything wrong that they're doing, then they're just going to keep on getting away with it and keep on exploiting students. And I think that's how ultimately they do get away with it, because a lot of students, I'm not generalising, but I think of the vast majority just kind of think, oh, well, I'm not going to be here forever. They can't be bothered to deal with it. But I think it's something that I'm really passionate about, because I just don't think it's just for anyone to have to go through. Oh, definitely, 1,000%. Obviously, I've had to move home now, but I think when I look to rent a property in the future, I will look out for so many things that I never would have. For example, this sounds really like medial, but the skirting boards in the property, they were barely there. And it was something that I initially spotted, and I thought that was strange. With loads of pipes, you would get like a set of like 4 different pipes, but obviously issues with the pipes mean issue with radiators or older radiators, and just in general not bringing things up to an attainable standard, or not showing any care then in the property, which can be shown from little tiny things like that, but all towards issues regarding there was, you know, not enough worktop next to the oven, the rail on the stairs was too short, so that was another hazard. And there was lots of little things that the council picked up that I thought, well, going forward, I will definitely be more aware of those. But obviously, despite that, I would never rent a property without having previously viewed it as well. Ultimately, I think it's the letting agents and landlords that should be to blame here, because they rely upon your complacency with these living standards to ultimately exploit you and profit off it. So my advice would be is just not to be complacent. It's not easy, and it hasn't been easy for me at all to speak out about these matters and to kind of resist complying with just going along with it. I mean, it is the easier option, definitely, to sit back and kind of take it, but I don't see why, just because we're students, we should have to put up with such living conditions and be exploited in such a way, because they think that you're naive and they can get away with it. So definitely just speak out, reach out to, there's loads of facilities out there for you, but Citizens Advice in particular, they're really helpful, or shelter homes, your local council. Just see what your rights are and don't take anything that they say at face value, because there's a lot of things hidden within the contract that can actually just be straight up not true and illegal, to be quite frank. So just be really vigilant.
But this isn't the only recent story. Amy Cadman stating that CPS ripped out her housemaid's kitchen without asking when they went home during lockdown, and upon arrival, finding that they had no kitchen and their possessions chucked on the sofa. In addition to redoing the stonework over Easter without taking the precautions to avoid getting remnants into the tenants' bedrooms, and then proceeding to make no effort to clean it up. Eve Thomas, whose household experienced rats, broken floorboards you could fall through, and similar to Charlie and Amy, mould, damp, as well as returning to the property to find their belongings moved and covered in dust, stayed for the entirety of her year-long tenancy with CPS Homes last year, and was willing to share the experiences of the household on their behalf.
Instead of kind of encountering issues, it was more just all we encountered was issues with the property, with the agents, with every single step of the process. There was issues with no help at all. So like in the property itself, it was absolutely rat filled. Every single cupboard in the kitchen, you would find a rat or drop-ins. All of our food would be eaten. You'd see them clear as day just looking at you. And of course we contacted CPS Homes, and their response was that it was our fault as the tenants for leaving food in the kitchen. But when we did a bit more investigating, there was a big hole from the outside of the property directly into our kitchen cupboard. So, oh, never. We called CPS and they would just blame us and try to charge us. We then called loads of different agencies we thought could help us, like the council, private people who could maybe get us some money back or even rehouse us into somewhere that was safe. Nothing ever came of anything. The council didn't help, CPS didn't help, and we were just blamed the entire way. From the offset, as soon as we moved in, we noticed there was a lot of damp that hadn't been there before, leaks in the roof, all of the windows, the seals had gone, so they were all mouldy, and I have a big mould allergy, so I got ill off the start from all the mould. Yeah, it was freezing cold. We found out there was no insulation in the roof. From the start, it was just awful. No, it was not at all. Obviously, when you move in somewhere, it can look a bit different if someone's left, but the fact, even the floors, for example, the floors were advertised as lovely hardwood floors. They were just splinters. All of us would get so many splinters, rips on our clothing, cuts, falls, we constantly got injured in that house. So like I said, we attempted to contact the council, hoping they could contact CPS because it was such, environmental health, it was so awful. And we were always told that these people would get in touch with CPS and they'd get back to us. Nothing ever happened. Well, I think they do. The one thing I'd actually say CPS are good at is marketing, and the other one is lying, to be honest. They'll constantly host sort of, I remember they were offering out free tea and coffee if you like their Facebook page for students. They own so many of the properties, the rental properties for students around here, that it can sometimes be unavoidable going with them. But they're cheaper than most. They have better locations than most. But yeah, no, I would never ever go with them again. Yeah, I have already put some things out on social media just to warn everyone. I think is disgusting. I mean, they take advantage of students who they think, they don't know what they're doing in the rental scene. They don't know all the ins and outs of all the laws. So they just completely take advantage. And as soon as we started citing some of the laws and some of our rights, half the time they would ask us, what's that? What does that mean? Oh yeah, we had many emails back and forth, constantly. Phone calls, the amount of time I must have been on hold with them, I think for all of the people in that house, their hold music is burned into our brains. And no, awful. And at the end they blocked our number, so we couldn't even get through to them. They blocked all of the tenants' numbers who'd called them up from our house. And then we thought, enough's enough. And we went into their offices, and we were told, nope, it's not this office you need to go to, it's that one. And then we were told it's the other one again, and we were just moved about until all that would really come of it is, we'll give you an email. Never happened. Oh, I'd say at least 3 out of 4 of us, if not all 4 of us who were on that tenancy, had lasting mental health effects from things like panic attacks due to the rats being everywhere. Every single one of us, and I'd say nearly every single person who visited that house, got ill from some sort of gastroenteritis or some sort of illness that were due to these rats being everywhere. Money. At the end of the day, with students, we didn't have that money to just pick somewhere else or to just move out, because we'd then need to find someone to take over our tenancy, and we couldn't do that to someone else with the state the house was in. No one would have taken it. We had literally no way out, so we were just stuck there living with rats for a full year. For our entire tenancy of the contract, there was rats everywhere, no beds, so we slept on mattresses on the floor while there were rats running everywhere. We all got very, very ill. I mean, obviously there's some research that you can do to easily spot where there could be some issues with damp or some issues with the sealants on the window, but also these things can often be covered up, especially with tiny exterior holes that let rats in. So honestly, my advice would be, whatever you do, don't go with CPS homes. I honestly think that obviously they've got so many tenants, so many people with them, not everyone is going to experience what we experienced or what countless other people have. There can be some good properties they may have where tenants have never had any issues. But the issue comes from when there is a complaint, they'll do absolutely nothing about it, no matter the severity. I just think because there's so many people who still think, oh, it'll be fine, we can go with CPS. They're managing to just scrape through each year and to just go under the radar.
We a rat died in our wall, and then we had a fly infestation.
Yeah.
And we all got very, very ill because of that.
Christmas.
Yeah. I had to leave because I was having panic attacks constantly. I was just like throwing up. I couldn't go anywhere in the house by myself because I didn't think I was scared of rats until they were just on me constantly. And I was just getting so sick because of it.
It was like a bush took a trial.
Yeah, and like I almost went to hospital, and I had to just go home to England because it was that bad. It was awful.
Yeah. So every time we need to use the toilet, because there was a big colony of rats living under our bath. Anytime we had to use the toilet, we would have to take someone else in there with us. Also often a BB gun.
Yeah.
Because they would just run at you.
They would run at you. They'd jump at you. It was awful.
Oh yeah, they ate holes through... If we closed the doors to try and keep them in a place, they would either dislocate all of their bones, because they can go into literally any space, or what they decided to do then, because there were so many of them, they chewed holes through all of our doors.
And one of them completely split in half because they chewed a massive hole in the bottom of it.
Yeah.
So when we came back after we had to leave for Christmas, it was sawdust everywhere, covering the floor, as well as just rat droppings, just absolutely everywhere. All of our food just strewn across the floor because they'd eaten most of it.
I mean, we spent a lot of money on food around Christmas, like most people do, wanting a bit of a party or a feast, a Christmas dinner. We couldn't do any of that because before we could use it, the rats would eat all of the food.
All of it.
So that was hundreds of pounds.
So much money.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds of pounds. We were scared that CPS were going to blame us for the damage to the property that the rats had just eaten.
The smell.
The smell was unbelievably bad.
They were just dead rats and living ones, both all over the house. The amount of flies from there, just swarms of flies, swarms of rats, loads of mould, leaks, and
just floorboards coming up. Like we would trip over everything. Like we got broken legs from broken kneecaps.
We had two broken kneecaps. Floorboard.
Yeah.
I'm sure we all had PTSD from that.
I get dreams and nightmares about it all the time.
Oh yeah,
literally.
Moving into this house, the amount of looking about we did, scouting around to make sure there was literally no way they could get in. Because in Cathays there's rats everywhere, but the issue is when there's a literal hole in your wall that allows them into your house, which is what happened with us.
And we're not untidy people, and it was insulting to us that CPS would blame us for it, even though we could actually see them coming into our house through the holes in the wall. And they told us that it was our fault because we had food in our kitchen.
The only advice we ever got from CPS homes was to only put food in the higher up kitchen cabinets and not to put food in the lower down kitchen cabinets, as apparently that's why the rats were coming and that's why it was our fault.
And they were in those cupboards as well, so...
Yeah, they were in every cupboard.
Every single cupboard.
For the hole in the wall, we had a contractor come round who put some... he looked at the holes and then advised us to block them up with steel wool. Yes.
I was not, because I moved in on, like, last minute. And I hadn't moved to... I hadn't been to Cardiff much before, and there is a massive reputation for CPS or throughout the students in Cardiff. Everybody knows to avoid it, even though they have such a monopoly over all of the properties. So it's pretty much unavoidable already.
Yeah, I mean, like, personally, I knew the reputation they had, But I did one I think most people do and thought, oh, that won't be me. Oh, we'll be fine. Oh, it's just people complaining.
Yeah, they only get reviews from people who have an issue.
Yeah.
Is everybody that has an issue.
Yeah, we completely fell for it, and
It's due to the consistency of these repeated claims about certain issues that mass membership community network organisations such as ACORN, the Association of Community Organisations for Reform Now, have formed to organise for a fairer deal for our communities left behind by companies, councils and parliaments. ACORN's Cardiff branch launched in May 2020, 24 days after Joe Lycett's Got Your Back episode broadcast, but was founded in Bristol in 2014 and now has 25 branches across the UK, 3 of which are here in Wales. On Facebook, at Cardiff/Acorn Cardydd has 839 total likes and 904 total follows, and on Twitter, at Acorn Cardiff has 920 followers. They have successfully campaigned in the past to remove no-fault evictions, prevent individual evictions, improve building safety, increase landlord regulation, oppose development and prevent council tax increases, releasing a 15-point national renters manifesto in collaboration with Generation Rent, London's Renters Union, Tenants Union UK, Renters' Rights London and the New Economics Foundation, although this manifesto is mostly aimed at Westminster, so doesn't directly affect the devolved nations. However, this is not to say that every student here at Cardiff feel the same way about CPS, many having positive experiences and view the letting agency very highly due to their speedy maintenance, and often feel that the problems are due to the landlord and not the agency itself. In their official statement in 2020, CPS Homes acknowledged and took accountability for the unforeseen staffing problem that they faced in 2019, which resulted in poor communication between themselves, landlords and tenants. And in response to the other allegations raised, CPS reject the weak, harshly edited and based on a pre-positioned narrative of Joe Lycett's coverage. It's worth reminding ourselves that inadequate student housing is a nationwide issue. But why is this the case? A national survey by Shelter Cymru in collaboration with the National Union of Students of Wales last year found that over 40% of students feel pressured into signing contracts or lease agreements without fully understanding them or being given time to consider their options. Referencing a UCAS report that over 25% of students in their second year or above secure their accommodation for the next academic year by December, and that 18% of students in Cardiff have done so by October, merely weeks into the academic calendar. This, coupled with financial concerns for 1 in 3 students and universities in terms of funding, even prior to COVID-19, creates this highly pressurised market-driven housing sector. Ultimately, the study suggests that making Wales a more attractive place to study by improving student housing and changing the culture of complacency surrounding student accommodation issues, which seems to be the driving force for little to no changes on the matter, would resolve or at least mitigate these issues. NUS Wales President Becky Ricketts stating, for decades, student housing has been a byword for low quality. Being ripped off by dodgy landlords, living with broken appliances or having to put up with damp and mould are seen as part of student life, to be tolerated and left unchallenged. As President of NUS Wales, I want to challenge the idea that students should just have to put up with shoddy housing as a rite of passage. If you found yourself in similar situations to the experiences discussed today, please contact the Cardiff University Student Advice Team, as well as the Cardiff University Student-Led Housing Service, Housing Action, or alternatively the Property Redress Scheme, following the links below, and seek legal advice if necessary. Twila Morris, CUTV News.